SLT Mobitel, the connection. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine gets the government nod for emergency use, but it comes from India.
University of Oxford with AstraZeneca have transferred the technology to Serum Institute, India, and there they have produced the same vaccine.
Time to admit, the Government Medical Officers Association insists that Sri Lanka is in community transmission stage as the island confirms the highest number of daily cases. From Derana to Valapane, another tremor in the vicinity of reservoirs.
Now the country as a whole is lifting up very slowly like that, maybe a few millimeters annually.
Strategic location. Former Turkish envoy to Colombo likens Sri Lanka to an unsinkable aircraft carrier for countries wanting continuation of trade flow and have military activities in the Indian Ocean. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Friday, the 22nd of January 2021.
Buy a 2-litre Coke and get a glass free.
ඇල්කොහොල් අඩංගු hand sanitizer භාවිත කරන්න. ලෙඩ රෝග ඇති කරන විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරන්න. හඳුන්වා දීමේ මිල රුපියල් 350යි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamke Kanayaka. Sri Lanka today joined the growing list of countries in the world to have granted approval for the emergency use of a COVID-19 vaccine. The choice of vaccine is Oxford AstraZeneca, developed in the UK. The island, however, will be receiving a batch of vaccines from India, with the relevant company there being approved to manufacture the vaccine.
As the coronavirus continued to tighten its grip on the world, scientists across the globe devoted themselves to find a viable vaccine. In about a year's time, several leading pharmaceutical companies, in collaboration with global entities, managed to manufacture which inoculate people from the feared virus. Pfizer-BioNTech, Moderna, Oxford AstraZeneca, Sputnik V and Sinopharm led the way in the quest for a vaccine. So far, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has reported the highest efficacy rate of 95%, following which prompt measures were taken by the UK to license the vaccine and start administering it to the general population. With many countries starting to roll out vaccination against COVID-19, the Sri Lankan government had been planning the same. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine requires cold storage at temperatures even colder than winter in Antarctica. However, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine does not require such extreme storage conditions, and in consideration of the logistical challenges, including shipping, experts point out that this is the most suitable vaccine for Sri Lanka. Therefore, the National Medicines Regulatory Authority today decided to grant the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine approval for emergency use in the island.
COVID-19 වසංගතය සඳහා ඔක්ස්ෆර්ඩ් ඇස්ට්‍රාසෙනික එන්නත ශ්‍රී ලංකාව තුල හදිසි භාවිතය සඳහා ඉඩදීම සඳහා ඒ අනුව අපි හිතනවා තවත් නොබෝ දිනකින්ම ඒ එන්නත අපේ රට තුල භාවිතය සඳහා අපිට අවස්ථාව ලැබෙයි කියලා. මේ තමයි පළවෙනි වතාව අපේ රට තුල COVID-19 රෝගය සඳහා එන්නතක් සඳහා අනුමැතිය හිමි වුණ. හුඟ දෙනෙක් ඊයේ පෙරේදා අපි දැක්කා දේශපාලන අධිකාරිය ඒ වගේම වෙනත් ක්‍රියාකාරිකයන් සමාජ මාධ්‍යවල පවා අහලා තිබුණා භූතානයට දෙන්න පුළුවන් නම් නේපාලයට දෙන්න පුළුවන් නම් මාලදීවයිනට දෙන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඇයි අපිට අනුමැතිය දෙන්න බැරි කියලා. හැබැයි අපි කියන්න ඕන අපේ රටේ නියාමන කටයුතු ඉතාම ශක්තිමත්. විශේෂයෙන්ම යුරෝපීය ප්‍රමිතීන්ට සමානව හෝ සමහර විට එතනිනුත් එහා ගිය ප්‍රමිතීන්ට යටත්ව තමයි අපි අපේ රටට එන්නත් ලබා දීමේදී අවස්ථාව දුන්නේ. අපේ නියාමන අධිකාරිය ඒ වගේම අපේ විශේෂඥ වෛද්‍යවරු මේ එන්නත් පිළිබඳව අපිට විස්තර ලැබුණම ඒවායේ සායනික පරීක්ෂණවල විස්තර ලැබුණම තාම පරීක්ෂාකාරීව ඒ පිළිබඳ අධ්‍යයනය කරලා තමයි මේ සඳහා අවස්ථාව ලබා දෙන්නේ. ඉතින් භූතානයේ හෝ මාලදිවයිනට වැඩිය අපේ රෙගියුලේෂන් ඔතොරිටිස් ශක්තිමත් නිසා සහ තද නිසා තමයි ඒ සඳහා අපිට යම්කිසි අතිරේක කාලයක් වැය වුණේ. හැබැයි ඒ තීරණය ශක්තිමත් තීරණයක්, හොඳ අධ්‍යයනයකින් පසුගත් තීරණයක්. මොකද අපේ රටේ අපි ඉක්මන්ම වීම පමණක් නෙමෙයි, අපේ සෞඛ්‍ය සේවකයන්ගේ, අපේ රටේ ජනතාවගේ ආරක්ෂාව පිළිබඳවත් අපි විශේෂ වශයෙන් සැලකිලිමත් වෙන නිසා තමයි මේ කරුණු කාරණා අධ්‍යයනය කරන්න අපිට අතිරේක වශයෙන් දින කිහිපයක් ගත වුණේ. ඉතින් මේ ඔක්ස්ෆර්ඩ් ඇස්ට්‍රාසෙනිකා එන්නතෙන් පසු තවත් එන්නත් කිහිපයක් සඳහාත් අපිට මේ වෙනකොට ආයුධපත් ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. ඒ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු අපි යොදාගෙන යනවා. ඒ වගේම පහුගිය සති දෙකක පමණ කාලේ සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ගරු අමාත්‍ය පවිත්‍ර දේවි වන්‍යාරච්චි මැතිණියගේ ඉඳන් 15ම සේවකයා දක්වා සියලු දෙනාම එන්නත ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා ලබා දීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය සියලුම යටිතල පහසුකම් වැඩි දියුණු කිරීම සඳහා ඒවා පුහුණු කිරීම සඳහා ඒ කාර්ය මණ්ඩල කැපකිරීම කරා. මම හිතන්නේ මේවා පිටතට පේන දේවල් නෙමෙයි. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා එන්නත් කරන වැඩසටහන නොබෝ දිනකින් ආරම්භ කරන්න. එය සාර්ථක කර ගැනීම සඳහා සියලු දෙනාගේ සහාය ලැබෙයි කියලා අප බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
ඇස්ට්‍රාසෙනිකා එන්නත සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔබතුමා ප්‍රකාශ කළා මේ සඳහා හදිසි අනුමැතිය ලබා දෙනවා කියලා. දැන් එහිදී දැන් මේක කොහොමද රාජ්‍යාංශයේ සතුවමද තියෙන්නේ නැත්නම් මේක පෞද්ගලිකාංශයත් එක්ක
නෑ අපි රාජ්‍යාංශයේ මගින් තමයි මේ කටයුත්ත සිදු කරන්නේ.
ඒ කියන්නේ මේක ප්‍රධානයක් විදියට ලැබෙන්නේ නැතුව මේ
ප්‍රධානයක් විදියට ලැබෙන්නේ අපිට. එන්නත ලබා දිය යුතු පිරිස් මොනවද කියන එක මොන කණ්ඩායම් වලටද කියන එක පිළිබඳව අපි මේ වෙනකොට ලැයිස්තු ගත කිරීමක් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒක සෞඛ්‍ය ලේකම් සහ සෞඛ්‍ය සේවා අධ්‍යක්ෂක ජෙනරාල්තුමා ඒ අදාළ කමිටුත් එක්ක සාකච්ඡා කරලා එන්නත ලැබුණට පස්සේ ඒ කටයුතු
ඔබමණ ජනගහනයක් මේ එන්නත් කිරීමේ වැඩසටහන සඳහා යොමු කරන්න සූදානම් වෙනවද?
ඒවා අපි මේ වෙනකොට ගණනම් බැලීම් කරගෙන යනවා. ඒ පිළිබඳව අපි ඉදිරියේදී සියලු සංඛ්‍යාලයකින් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. එන්නත් ලබා දීම පිළිබඳ අපි බොහොම හොඳ වාර්තා තියෙන රටක්. ඒ වෙනුවෙන් හොඳ විශේෂඥවරු අපිට ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් ඒ අයගේ සහයෝගය අරගෙන අපි මේක සාර්ථකව කරන්න තමයි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
මේ එන්නත ගෙනන රට මොකද්ද?
ඇත්තටම ඔක්ස්ෆර්ඩ් ඇස්ට්‍රාසෙනික කියන එන්නත බ්‍රිතාන්‍ය තමයි මූලික පරීක්ෂණ කණ්ඩායමක් මගින් ඉදිරිපත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඔවුන් වෙනුවෙන් නිෂ්පාදනය කරන ආයතනයක් තියෙනවා ඉන්දියාවේ පුණේ නගරේ. ඉතින් අපි හිතනවා ඒ පුණේ නගරේ කර්මාන්තශාලාවෙන් තමයි අපිට ලැබෙන්නේ කියලා.
Meanwhile, Director General of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority Dr. Kamal Jayasinghe gave further explanation on the vaccine.
This vaccine has been innovated by University of Oxford with AstraZeneca company. After developing this vaccine, they have transferred the technology to Serum Institute India, and there they have produced the same vaccine, and after so many studies they have confirmed that this is very much similar to the original vaccine. Based on that, MHRA UK, they have given the approval for emergency use. Based on that and with the recommendation of our expert committee, NMRA has given the approval for emergency use in Sri Lanka.
Shipments of Indian manufactured Oxford AstraZeneca, which is known as Covishield, have already been distributed to Bhutan, Maldives, Bangladesh, Nepal, Myanmar and Seychelles. Meanwhile, the Director General of Health Services told AdaDerana last night that the necessary documents have been submitted to the Attorney General's Department to obtain legal approval to import the vaccine from India. However, Attorney General Badulla de Oliveira has sought further clarifications from the Director General of Health Services over the agreement with India to import the vaccine into the country.
Pay just 500,000 rupees to reserve your unit today. Mulberry Residence.
In the meantime, now the Government Medical Officers Association warns that Sri Lanka has descended into the community transmission stage of the coronavirus. They had been calling for attention on the matter for some time, and their latest comments come as the island recorded the highest ever single-day cases ever since COVID-19 first broke out in the country in March last year. In the meantime, just minutes ago, 2 more COVID-19 deaths were confirmed, taking the death toll in Sri Lanka to 278.
Sri Lanka's highest number of daily COVID-19 infections was recorded yesterday. On the 2nd of December, 878 cases were confirmed, but yesterday's caseload was 887. The Colombo district yet again recorded the most number of infections from any district with 337 cases. The number of cases confirmed in Gampaha was 136, while 71 infections were reported from Kalutara, 51 from Mautale, 49 from Kandy, 47 from Gaul, 33 from Kurunegala, 29 from Ampara, 25 from Ratnapura, while Polonaru recorded 21. There were a further 74 infections spread across 15 other districts. The remaining 14 coronavirus infections were identified yesterday involved as Sri Lankan expatriates. Meanwhile, 346 new novel coronavirus cases have been confirmed in the country so far today. In the meantime, Sri Lanka's overall number of COVID-19 related fatalities rose to 276 yesterday, following the confirmation of 2 deaths. According to the Department of Government Information, both victims were from Colombo. One of the victims was a 71-year-old woman from Palyagoda, whose cause of death was stated as acute diabetes pneumonia. The other, meanwhile, was a 46-year-old from Aturugiriya, who had died due to COVID pneumonia and multiple organ dysfunction brought on by a nervous system infection. In other developments, 10 students of the Passara National School in Badulla district have tested positive for COVID-19. They are students of grade 12 and 13. 2 of them were initially identified as COVID-19 positive after PCR tests were carried out among students who attended the National Independence Day parade. Subsequently, the health officers in charge of the area said that a further 8 students tested positive after 80 of the first 2 infected students' close contacts were referred to PCR testing. Meanwhile, editor of the Government Medical Officers Association, Dr. Haritha Aludge, warns that the country has well as truly breached the COVID-19 risk boundary, with the present rate of infection exceeding 5.5%.
දෛනිකව රෝගීන් වැඩි වෙනවා කියන්නේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම අපිට ඉදිරි සති දෙක කාලය තුල දෛනිකව වාර්තා වෙන වැඩිම මරණ ගාන ගැනත් අපිට කතා කරන්න වෙනවම තමයි. ඊවෙන පණිවිඩය තමයි අපේ පොසිටිව් රේට් එක දැන් 5.5 පැනලා තියෙන්නේ. දැන් මාසයකට කලින් 3 මට්ටමේ තිබුණේ. අපි අවදානම් කඩේම පැනලා ඉවරයි. දවස ගානේ රෝගීන් වාර්තා වෙනවා මූලාශ්‍රයක් සොයාගත නොහැකි. බිම් මට්ටමේ යථාර්ථය තමයි සමාජ ව්‍යාප්තිය. ප්‍රායෝගික යථාර්ථය තමයි සමාජ ව්‍යාප්තිය. ඒ නිසා ඊටාම පැහැදිලිව වෛද්‍යවරුන් ඇතුළු හෙදකාර මණ්ඩලය ඇතුළු කනිෂ්ඨ කාර්ය මණ්ඩලය ඇතුළු මේ සියලු දෙනා අද වෙනකොට ආසාදිත වෙමින් තියෙනවා. දෙවෙනි රැල්ල තුල විතරක් 100කට ආසන්න වෛද්‍යවරුන් පිරිසක් ආසාදිතයන් බවට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ මොහොතේදී විතරක් වෛද්‍යවරුන් 40කට ආසන්න ප්‍රමාණයක් ප්‍රතිකාර මධ්‍යස්ථානවල ප්‍රතිකාර ලබනවා. රෝගීන් එනකොට අසාමාන්‍ය ඉහළ ප්‍රමාණ වලින් ලබන මාසෙ මැද වෙනකොට කවුද යට ප්‍රතිකාර කරන්නේ?
In the meantime, the country's overall number of recoveries rose by 633 today, taking the total number of persons who recovered since the pandemic broke out in the country to 48,617. Following high daily case numbers in recent days, the number of active coronavirus cases in the country has risen to 7,529.
Moving on with other stories, former Turkish envoy to Colombo, Tunca Özühüder, has likened Sri Lanka to an unsinkable aircraft carrier for countries that want the continuation of trade flow and have military activities in the Indian Ocean. The former ambassador is also quoted saying that more Turkish investors can be attracted to Sri Lanka, with Turkey's trade volume with the island being around $180 million in 2019.
Former Turkish ambassador to Sri Lanka Tunca Özühüder has said that Turkey politically has no problems with Sri Lanka and the two countries have completely friendly relations. He had added that the two countries are fighting against separatist terrorism and have similar problems. A state-run media outlet said that both countries support all their draft resolutions that they brought up to combat international terrorism, adding that Sri Lanka usually votes in favor of Turkey's numerous nominations in the international arena. The former Turkish ambassador had said that there are many issues that should be deepened in relations, the most important of which is economic relations. While noting that in 2019 Turkey's trade volume with Sri Lanka was around $180 million, he had said that more Turkish investors can be attracted to Sri Lanka. While commenting on Sri Lanka's important geopolitical role in the Indian Ocean, Özühüder had said that Sri Lanka is like an unsinkable aircraft carrier for countries that want the continuation of trade flow and have military activities in the Indian Ocean. The former Turkish envoy to Sri Lanka notes that Sri Lanka is a strategically important country for India and the US to prevent Chinese domination in the Indian Ocean, adding the Colombo port is vital for China's Maritime Silk Road initiative.
India says that they have communicated their strongest protest with regards to the incident where several Indian fishermen perished while poaching in Sri Lankan waters. The Sri Lankan Navy said 4 bodies were recovered across 2 days after the poaching fishermen's trawler sank after it collided with the Sri Lankan Navy patrol vessel.
The incident occurred on Wednesday when the Sri Lankan naval units on patrol had carried out an operation to seize Indian fishing trawlers poaching in Sri Lankan waters trespassing the IMBL after observing more than 50 trawlers. As the operation was panning out, the Navy says that one of the Indian fishing trawlers maneuvered aggressively to resist arrest and flee the scene, during which it had collided with the naval craft. The trawler had lost stability and had sunk at sea. Navy search and rescue teams have so far recovered 4 bodies. The 4 corpses have been taken to the Jaffna Teaching Hospital as directed by the magistrate to take further action as required by law. The Navy says the identities of the deceased are yet to be confirmed. Meanwhile, the Ministry of External Affairs in India issued a media communique on the matter, expressing their shock over what it termed the unfortunate loss of lives. It says that 3 Indian fishermen and 1 Sri Lankan national had perished during the incident. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs goes on to say that their strongest protest with regard to the incident was conveyed by the Indian High Commissioner to the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister. It adds that a strong démarche was also made to the Sri Lankan Acting High Commissioner in New Delhi. The Indian side emphasized the need to deal with issues pertaining to fishermen in a humanitarian matter, while stressing that the existing understandings between the 2 governments in that regard must be strictly observed.
A minor earth tremor was reported in the area of Valapani in Badulla today. Senior and Chair Professor of Geology at the University of Peradeniya, Athula Senaratna, says that the tremors took place in Valapani as the area resides on what he termed as a shear zone, a tectonically active region. The professor said that minute tremors might be taking place due to the reactivation of this shear zone.
This earthquake is 1.8 in Richter scale, which is a very small one. We cannot call it an earthquake. It is a very minute tremor in the area. There had been many tremors recorded from this area, especially when you plot all these tremors, it is from the area where our main reservoirs are located. So these main reservoirs, namely Polgolla, Victoria, Randenigal and Rantambe, are located along the Mahavali River, and there is also, coincidentally, there is a major fault zone or shear zone going through this area. Geologically, a shear zone means tectonically active zone, which is for time being it is not active, but time to time the activities can be triggered and tremors can be caused. So that may be the reason for these recent tremors. It's also, we had doubts about the mining in the area and we investigated the matter and we found this also can have a bearing on the earthquakes in the area. In general, there is a regional upliftment of the land as Professor Vitanage described in 1970s. These shear zones which are going through this area may be becoming active now once again. Now the country as a whole is lifting up very slowly like that, maybe a few millimeters annually, and triggering movements through the shear zones. So the movements through the shear zone, it won't happen as a continuous process. It may be a discrete process. When the movement is taking place, there can be a tremor. So I think these tremors may be an indication of reactivation of the faults. So we will have to do further investigations to identify and pinpoint areas where this reactivation is taking place. So that is why the committee appointed by the government with the Ministry of Environment to investigate the recent tremors in the area, reasoned out the main causes of the earthquakes in the area. There were 5-fold reasons given. These are one by one now being investigated. Right now the report is submitted to the ministry and now the plans are being made to install a seismic measurement network in the area so that we can measure even tiny tremors taking place in the area. With those information, we can probably identify the causes of the tremors now happening in this area.
Now, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has appointed a 3-member commission of inquiry to investigate, report or take necessary action on findings of preceding commissions or committees appointed to investigate into human rights violations, serious violations of international humanitarian law and other such offences. The President's Media Division said that Supreme Court Judge AHMD Nawaz has been appointed as the chairperson of the commission. Now, retired Inspector General of Police Chandra Fernando and retired District Secretary Nimal Abesiri are the other members of the commission.
The 3-member Presidential Commission of Inquiry is tasked with finding out whether preceding commissions of inquiry and committees which have been appointed to investigate into human rights violations have revealed any human rights violations, serious violations of international humanitarian law and other such serious offences. It must also identify the findings of the said commissions and committees and whether recommendations have been made on how to deal with the said facts. The PCOI has to identify the manner in which those recommendations have been implemented so far in terms of the existing law and what steps need to be taken to implement those recommendations further in line with the present government policy. The Commission has the authority to make required inquiries and investigations and to present interim reports where it is necessary to the President. All government officials have been directed to provide required assistance and information when requested by the Commission. The extraordinary Gazette notification pertaining to the appointment of the new Commission was issued yesterday, and the final report of the Commission should be handed over to the President within 6 months since the date of the appointment of the Commission.
The United National Party insists that the 2019 government, in which the UNP was a part of, has not entered into any agreement to sell the East Container Terminal or any section of the Colombo port to India, Japan or any other country. The UNP clarification comes at a time when a set of proposals pertaining to the terminal was handed over by the Campaign to Protect the East Container Terminal to the Cabinet Subcommittee today. The campaign calls for the development of the terminal devoid of foreign investment.
In a statement, the UNP's Central Media Unit says that the 2019 agreement pertaining to the East Container Terminal at the Colombo port pertained only to the company operating the terminal and that an agreement to sell the terminal was not entered into with India or Japan. It said that the Memorandum of Cooperation was signed between the Sri Lankan, Indian and Japanese governments to lease out the terminal to a terminal operating company. It added that a terminal operations company was to be established with Sri Lanka, retaining a 51% stake, while the remaining 49% stake would be distributed between a nominee company of India and a nominee company of Japan. The party notes that on the 10th of September 2019, the cabinet approval was granted to proceed with the signing of the cooperation agreement between the three countries. The UNP added that the development and operations of the ECT was to be carried out over 2 phases. The statement goes on to say that other details were to be negotiated in accordance with clauses 3 and 5 as stipulated in Memorandum of Cooperation by a joint working group comprising of representatives of the 3 governments, and none of these matters had been finalized. Further, the decision of the management of the terminal operations company had to be taken jointly by the 3 governments. The UNP says, quote, at the time of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa assuming office, India had not formally informed us of the company which they would nominate. It was indicated that it would be the Adani Group. The Sri Lankan government had the condition that the Indian partner should not operate any other port in India to the disadvantage of the Colombo port, unquote.
Now, in other local stories, veteran journalist and media personality Kalakirti Dr. Edwin AdaDerana has passed away at the age of 90. He was a prominent film critic, environmentalist, teacher and erudite, while he had been bestowed with over 300 awards during his lifetime. AdaDerana had also held top positions in various state institutions. Born on the 3rd of December 1922 in the area of Unawatuna in Galle, AdaDerana was an alumnus of Mahinda College and the University of Ceylon, where he obtained a degree in Sinhala and English languages. He found his true calling in journalism, having joined the Lake House in 1949. AdaDerana worked for most of the newspapers published by Lake House, and he was the editor of Navayuga for some time. Later, he was instrumental in establishing mass communication and media courses at local universities. He was also a renowned writer and Buddhism and current topics writer, and had continued to contribute to newspapers and magazines as well past his 90s. He also authored several books in Sinhala and English. We will see you shortly after this break. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, headline inflation had decreased to 4.6% in December 2020 from 5.2% in November. The central bank says that this was due to the statistical effect of the high base prevailed in December 2019. Meanwhile, food inflation year-on-year decreased to 7.5% in December 2020 from 9.4% in November 2020, whereas non-food inflation year-on-year increased to 2.2% in December 2020 from 1.7% in November. The change in the National Consumer Price Index measured on an annual average basis decreased marginally to 6.2% in December 2020 from 6.3% in November the same year. Monthly change of NCPI, meanwhile, was recorded at 1.03% in December last year, mainly due to increases observed in prices of items in food category. Moreover, monthly changes of food and non-food categories were recorded at 1.02% and 0.01% respectively in December. The central bank says that increases were observed mainly in the prices of coconut, vegetables, potato, rice and red onions during December 2020 within the food category. Further, year-on-year core inflation increased to 4.7% in December 2020 from 4.5% in November the same year, while annual average core inflation decreased marginally to 4.1% in December from 4.2% in November last year. Now taking a look at the Colombo Bourse, Sri Lanka's stocks closed up 4.09% today, breaking another record with renewed interest in banks, finance companies and Carson Cumberbatch joining LOLC Holdings linked firms. Colombo's all-share price index gained 4.09% to close at 8,463.43, breaking yesterday's record of 8,131.25. The S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks meanwhile gained 3.62% to close at 3,312.35. Now here's a brief report on today's market performance.
The stock market seems to be unstoppable at this moment of time. Today also we saw the market surging through with the heavy gains in the index. Today the index gain was 332 points and the index reached 8,463 at this moment of time, and today's intraday gain of 332 points seems to be the highest ever gain that we've seen in the stock market history. So with this we are seeing strong buying interest coming across the board in all counters from the investor community. Retail investors seem to be heavily interested in the market. So with this, today we saw the Haley's group of companies having a considerable buying interest across the board, while we also saw the Haley's group of companies also having all companies across the board, including subsidiaries, having significant gains after the announcement of multiple splits across the board.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.